Before we begin, take a moment to get comfortable. Let your arms go heavy, your breath slow. And as you listen, feel free to leave a comment sharing what time it is, where you are, and what city or village you're listening from. It's love to know. And if you'd like more quiet stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe so they gently appear when you need them most. Now, let's begin. You begin by picturing the map of the British Isles, drawn not in ink, but in stone and water. It's an island country surrounded on all sides by the North Sea, the English Channel, and the Atlantic Ocean. At first glance, the land looks permanent, as though it has always been this way. But if you linger on the thought, you start to sense the truth that the island is perched on something far less still than it appears. Beneath the waves, beneath the sandy seabeds and the shelves of rock, the earth moves, even when no one feels it. The United Kingdom sits on the northwestern edge of the European continent, balanced near the line where ancient tectonic plates press gently together. It is not the fierce collision zone of the Himalayas, nor the fiery seam of the Pacific Ring of Fire. Instead, it lies on what seems, at first, a quiet edge. But quiet does not mean unmoving. The seas around it, from the cold northern waters near Scotland to the calmer southern waves near Dover, hide a landscape that is still shifting. Even now, imagine yourself floating above these waters, suspended in the hush of dawn. Beneath you stretches the continental shelf, a shallow platform of rock that holds the isle steady, yet slowly changes. The North Sea's floor slopes downward, carrying sediments deposited over millions of years. Each layer of sand, mud, and clay holds a fragment of time. Yet under those sediments lies the more ancient bedrock stone that remembers ice, weight, and pressure for most of daily life. No one notices. You stand on a beach, watch the tide come in, and the ground beneath your feet seems unchanged. Buildings rise, roads stretch across hills, harbors hold their ships, and the soil feels stable. But the earth works on slower scales than human memory. Beneath the island, beneath the quiet sea, the ground drifts upward and downward in rhythms, measured not by hours or seasons, but by thousands of years. This hidden motion is part of something called isostatic, long word that simply means balance. The Earth's crust floats on its deeper, softer layers, like wood on water. When weight presses down, the crust sinks. When the weight is lifted, it slowly rises again. Britain's crust carries a long memory of weight. During the last ice age, glaciers pressed heavily on the northern half of the land. Kilometers of ice sank into the ground, forcing it lower. When the ice melted, the weight was gone, but the land did not simply spring back like a sponge. It began, slowly, to lift again. That movement has never truly stopped. The seas around the isles hold this story in silence. The floor beneath the North Sea tilts very gently as parts of Scotland continue to rise while southern England slowly sinks. The ocean hides this motion, but scientists, with their satellites and instruments, have traced it, few millimeters. Each year, almost nothing, yet over centuries. Enough to redraw coasts. To understand it, imagine an old wooden table, left in a quiet room. One end carries a heavy stone, the other side is bare. Over time, the wood bends, not quickly, but patiently. Move the stone, and the bent side begins, ever so slowly, to rise. That is Britain one side, lifting, the other dipping, the whole balance shifting beneath the sea. It feels strange to think that the land itself is moving. Imagine oceans shifting, winds turning, but not the ground. Yet here, beneath the surrounding seas, the story of the earth is told in motion. You cannot see. Scotland's northern coastlines rise like a silent breath. England's southern shores sink, leaning gently toward the sea. And all the while, waves move above, unaware of the slow dance beneath. The stillness of the ocean surface hides this truth. To the eye, the water moves with the tide. with the moon's pull, with the storms that roll in from the Atlantic. But beneath that, deeper down, the crust lives and bends with an ancient memory. And because the motion is so slow, it feels timeless. Cannot watch it happen in a single moment. You can only know that over the span of thousands of years, the island is not the same island. Archaeologists sometimes uncover this history in unexpected ways. Along old coasts, now stranded above the tide, they find raised beaches, lines of sand and shells that once marked the shore. Now, they rest high above, on cliffs or grassy fields, proof that the land has risen since the sea once lapped there. In other places, sunken forests lie beneath the waves, drowned as the land dipped or as waters rose. Tree stumps preserved in mud, whisper of times when fields and villages once stretched farther outward. The ocean floor beneath the UK carries both kinds of evidence: beaches lifted, forests drowned. It is the meeting place of two motions. The lands rise and fall, and the sea's endless climb. For while the ground remembers glaciers, the oceans respond to melting ice across the globe. As polar ice caps shrink, waters spread higher. As even as Scotland lifts, the sea itself also rises. The balance is delicate, uncertain, and deeply slow. Imagine again the silence beneath the waves. You drift downward, past the flickering light, where fish turn in schools, down to the seabed itself. There, the world feels immovable. Rocks lie, scattered. Sediments drift with the currents. Yet, if you could stay long enough, longer than lifetimes, you would watch the seabed rise, grain by grain, millimeter by millimeter, reshaping the map. You would see Scotland climb out of the sea's grasp, even as southern England edges further in. This movement is not violent. It is not like an earthquake with sudden cracks or jolts. It is the opposite: peaceful, unhurried, patient. Land lifts as though breathing out after holding too long. The seabed shifts like a sleeper, turning in dreams. The ocean itself does not resist. It flows and adjusts, filling in where the land gives way, retreating where the cliffs climb. To live on these isles is to stand on memory. Every hill, every bay, every shoreline is shaped not only by tides, but by the slow rising and falling of the ground beneath. The quiet sea is not just water, but a veil covering the long patience of stone. And so, when you look out at the sea from a harbor or a cliff, you are seeing more than water. You are gazing into the future, into a balance still unfolding. The coasts of tomorrow will not be the coasts of today. Somewhere beneath you, unseen, the earth continues its quiet work. The United Kingdom, carved by time, does not rest. Its seas hold the silence of motion, the stillness of change. And as you breathe with the rhythm of waves, you begin to sense the deeper rhythm the earth beneath. It's lifting and tilting, forever slow, forever patient. And just as you begin to feel this motion, your thoughts drift toward a deeper question. How does the earth remember its past? Stone holds memory. If the seabed remembers ice, what other stories lie written beneath our feet, waiting to be told in silence? You picture stone as something that does not change. A cliff face, a mountain slope, a pebble smoothed by centuries of tide. To human eyes, stone is permanence, the ground beneath your feet, the walls of old cathedrals, the bedrock that never seems to move. Yet, even stone carries memory. It remembers what is pressed upon it, what is lifted from it, what is frozen and thawed above it. And in that memory lies the story of Britain's shifting ground. During the last ice age, the British Isles wore a heavy crown of ice. Vast glaciers stretched across the land, pressing southward from Scotland, spreading into valleys, creeping over hills. Imagine sheets of ice, not measured in inches, but in kilometers, stacked one upon another, covering almost every part of the landscape. It was not the gentle snow of winter, but a weight beyond imagining. The land itself bent under its load. Stone though it feels solid, floats in its own way. Beneath the crust lies the mantle rock, soft enough to flow across geological time. The crust rides upon it like a raft. Press down with ice, and the raft sinks. Release the pressure, and the raft rises again. It is a slow give and take, a balance that scientists call isostatic adjustment. But you can think of it simply as memory. Stone never forgets the burdens it once held. Close your eyes and imagine the sound of that ice pressing. There is no roar, no sudden crack, just silence, deep and long, as the weight settles into the crust. For thousands of years, the land was bowed downward. Valleys deepened, not only by rivers, but by the force of frozen walls grinding across them. Hills flattened, shorelines bent. Britain was reshaped by pressure so steady that it seemed eternal. And then, slowly, it ended. Warmer climates melted the glaciers, turning ice into torrents of water. The seas rose, the rivers swelled, and the weight lifted. But stone does not rebound as quickly as a spring. Instead, it holds the memory of ice for millennia, rising only by millimeters each year, still adjusting even now. In Scotland, that memory is strongest. The north feels the greatest rise, as though the land is still stretching after being pressed too long. Old shorelines sit stranded above today's tide, reminders of how far the land has climbed since the ice melted. In contrast, southern England, which carried less of the weight, now tilts downward, balancing the motion. It is a seesaw written across the country, north rising, south sinking, all because of the memory of glaciers. You can see this memory in landscapes if you know how to. Look, raised beaches tell one part of the story. They are lines of sand and gravel, once touched by waves, now high above the sea. They rest like scars, quiet reminders that the shore was not always where it is today. Con forests tell the other half. In places like Cardigan Bay or the Severn Estuary, stumps of ancient trees still stand, blackened by salt, preserved in mud. These forests once grew on dry land, now lost to the sea. Each one speaks of the land tilting, of stone adjusting, of memory shifting into the present. Scientists measure this memory with precision instrument satellites, tracking elevation, key pass markers fixed to the ground, tide gauges recording every shift of water and land. Their data shows the slow breathing of the earth. Scotland rising by almost a millimeter each year. The south slipping down in balance. Numbers seem small, but over centuries, they become shorelines. They become villages lost or cliffs reborn. The memory is not only geological, it is also cultural. Myths of drowned lands and sunken kingdoms echo in Britain's folklore. Tales of lioness, swallowed by the sea near Cornwall, or Cantor Gweled, lost beneath Cardigan Bay, may be rooted in these shifts. People living near the coast watched fields disappear, watched waters creep higher. To them, the sea seemed to claim the land without warning, yet beneath that mystery was the quiet truth of stone remembering ice. Think of it like the memory of the body. When you carry a heavy load for too long, your muscles ache even after you set it down. The body remembers the strain, the joints creak, the spine adjusts. Stone works the same way, but on timescales vast beyond measure. Long after the weight is gone, the ground still stretches, still shifts, still recalls the pressure of glaciers. Even today, it's the memory of ice shapes Britain's future. As global seas rise with the melting of distant ice sheets, the land here is still moving according to its own memory. In Scotland, the rising ground helps resist some of the encroaching sea. In the south, the sinking ground worsens it, inviting the water further in. Flood defenses, harbor walls, and coastal towns are all caught in the quiet negotiation between stone and ocean. This memory is written in silence. You cannot hear the crust rising, cannot feel it beneath your feet. It is as invisible as the turning of the earth itself. Yet, if you pause, if you imagine the weight of those vanished glaciers, you can begin to sense it the way the land carries its past within it, the way even stone remembers. And there is something soothing in that thought. The ground beneath you, seemingly unchanging, is alive with patience, tease. It holds the story of ice, of pressure, of release, and it carries that story into the present without hurry. To walk upon it is to walk upon history, not carved in words or monuments, but in the very shape of the earth. As night deepens and you listen, may feel the weight of silence settle, the same silence that once held the glaciers. Again, as your thoughts drift, you might wonder if the earth remembers so patiently, what else lies hidden in its quiet adjustments? What other rhythms unfold, too slow for us to see, but steady enough to shape the seas and lands we know? You imagine the last great ice sheets, their massive weight pressing down on the north of Britain. For tens of thousands of years, the land lay pinned beneath kilometers of frozen water. The ground did not protest. It simply sank into the softer mantle below, adjusting to the burden. Then, slowly, as the climate shifted and the ice retreated, that weight was gone. What followed was not an instant rebound, but something more subtle and exhale that is still unfolding. This process is called glacial isostatic adjustment. The term is long, but the image is simple. Picture a mattress bearing the weight of a sleeper. As long as the body lies upon it, the surface sinks. When the sleeper rises, the mattress begins to lift, slowly, gradually, until the shape is restored. The Earth's crust behaves in the same way, though its rebound is measured not in minutes, but in millennia. When the glaciers melted at the end of the last ice age, Britain was transformed. Valleys filled with water, rivers swelled into estuaries, and seas rose around the land. But beneath the waves, the land itself began to move. Scotland, pressed deepest by ice, started to rise. England, less burdened, tilted downward to balance the lift. The result was not a simple return to the way things had been, but a quiet reshaping of the whole island. You cannot see this rebound in daily life. Stand on a harbor wall in Aberdeen or walk along the cliffs of Northumberland, and the land feels solid, eternal, but measurements tell the truth. The ground is lifting, millimeter by millimeter, each year. In the south, near London or Cornwall, the story is reversed. The land is settling, leaning down toward the sea. It is a long, slow seesaw, invisible in the moment, but undeniable across centuries. Archaeologists have uncovered traces of this motion. In Orkney and Shetland, raised beaches mark the line where waves once lapped, now stranded meters above the tide. In southern estuaries, drowned forests lie preserved beneath mud, their roots still gripping the soil where they once grew. These are the quiet records of rebound, the land sinking, the earth remembering its balance. The science behind this movement is delicate. Beneath the crust lies the mantle, a zone of rock so hot and pressured that it can flow, slowly like honey in winter. When ice weighs down the crust, it pushes into the mantle, forcing it aside. When the ice melts, the mantle flows back, allowing the crust to lift. The process is not uniform. It ripples outward, adjusting in circles, so that one region rises while another dips. Britain, caught on the edge of the old ice sheets, carries this ripple across its length. If you imagine time not in decades, but in thousands of years, the rebound becomes visible. Tana's north climbs steadily, drawing shorelines upward, while the south edges deeper into the sea. In the far future, these movements will redraw maps, just as they already have since the last ice age. And yet, the rebound is never complete. The earth does not return to what it was before. It only settles into a new balance. It's like a hand stretched after carrying weight. It never quite forgets the shape of the burden. In this way, Britain's land is still in conversation with its glaciers long after they vanished. There is a gentleness to this motion. It is not sudden like an earthquake, nor violent like a volcanic eruption. It is steady, patient, almost soothing. The land breathes back into shape. The seabed shifts like a slow tide beneath stone. Every millimeter tells of deep memory, of weight lifted, of time flowing forward. The rebound has consequences, though they arrive just as slowly. Harbors built centuries ago may find their waters shallower or deeper, depending on whether the land beneath is rising or falling. Floodplains adjust, marshes creep outward, cliffs reveal more of their foundations. Even human history has been shaped by these subtle shifts. Stories of drowned kingdoms may carry echoes of real coasts lost to the sea as the south tilted downward. Legends of fertile fields claimed by the tide may be memories of land adjusting to the rebound. Scientists today track the process with satellites and sensors. They watch the ground lift in Scotland, a fraction of a centimeter at a time. See London settle, almost imperceptibly, but certainly. With each decade, the measurements add up. The rebound is not a relic of the past. It is a motion still in progress, a reminder that the Earth's deep rhythms continue long after the glaciers are gone. Think of how it feels to set down. It's a heavy load you have carried for too long. Your arms tremble with release. Your spine stretches. Your breath deepens. That is the land of Britain. The weight of ice has been set down, but the body of stone is still stretching, still adjusting, still finding its balance. And beneath it all, the ocean keeps its own rhythm. As Scotland rises, the sea around it does not shrink away, but flows to fill the spaces elsewhere. As the south sinks, the waters creep further in. It is a quiet negotiation between land and sea, each moving at its own pace, each shaping the coastline in ways no one notices until centuries pass. You can walk today on a cliff in the north and look out at waves rolling below. You may think the view eternal, yet if you could stand in the same place 1,000 years from now, the cliff would stand higher, the sea further away. In the south, a village by the coast might seem safe today, yet in 1,000 years, the tide may already have claimed its ground. All of this because of a rebound too slow for the human eye, but steady enough to shape futures. The slow rebound of the deep is a lesson in patience. It reminds you that change does not always shout. Sometimes it whispers, moving in rhythms so long that no single lifetime can contain them. And yet, these whispers matter. They redraw the shorelines, reshape the rivers, guide the way people live with the sea. As you rest with this thought, you feel the silence beneath the waves, the crust shifting upward like a deep exhale. You imagine stone remembering ice, mantle flowing back, the earth lifting itself after burden. And you realize the story of glaciers is not finished. It continues now beneath your feet, in the slow rebound of the deep. And just as this thought settles, quietness rises with it. If the land itself breathes back into balance, what other rhythms, hidden from daily sight, shape the seas and the islands above them? What other cycles of patience ripple through the earth, waiting to be heard? The sea is known for its rhythm. Twice a day, the tide rises and falls, pulled by the moon's gravity. Waves roll endlessly, carrying the surface of the water back and forth. This daily breath is easy to see, easy to measure. Up beneath it, hidden from human eyes, another rhythm unfolds, a rhythm not of hours, but of centuries. The seabed itself breathes so slowly that it seems still, and yet, across a long time, it too rises and falls. Imagine kneeling at the shore and watching the tide creep in, then retreat. Its motion feels alive, steady, soothing. Now imagine the seabed itself doing the same, but on a time scale so stretched that no tide chart could capture it. Millennia become its seconds. Ages become its minutes. This is the breathing of the deep. Earth, a slow adjustment of stone that underlies the oceans around Britain. The seabed does not breathe in water, nay, but in weight. When ice presses upon the land, the crust beneath is forced downward into the mantle, like a raft pressed into soft clay. When the ice melts, that weight is gone, and the seabed begins to lift again. This is glacial isostatic adjustment, patient rise of land freed from burden. Unlike the tide, which repeats each day, this breathing unfolds only once every tens of thousands of years. The contrast between these two rhythms is striking. The tide moves with a whispering regularity, each wave returning as predictably as a heartbeat. The seabed, in its slow breath, seems almost frozen, yet it too is alive with movement. In Scotland, the floor of the ocean still rises, millimeter by millimeter, like an inhalation spread across centuries. In the south of England, the floor slowly sinks, as though exhaling the balance. Scientists trace this breathing with instruments designed for patience. GPS markers anchored to stone measured tiny uplifts over decades. Tide gauges set along coasts revealed the shifting interplay of rising land and rising seas. Satellites, circling silently above, send down their signals, mapping every contour of change. To the untrained eye, these shifts are invisible, but to those who listen carefully, the seabed speaks in its long rhythm. The breathing of the seabed has shaped Britain's history in quiet ways. Raised beaches mark the places where the land has lifted beyond the sea's reach. Sunken forests, hidden beneath waves, tell of times when the ground tilted downward. Harbors built centuries ago sometimes find their waters shallower or deeper than their founders intended, the seabed shifting beneath their pilings. Even myths of drowned kingdoms like Lioness or Cantragwelid may echo this breathing. Stories born from watching the land change too slowly to understand. Unlike the quick force of earthquakes, this motion is gentle, unhurried. The seabed does not shatter, sighs. It does not collapse. It drifts. You could watch in deep time, compressing centuries into moments. You would see the crust rise and settle like the chest of a sleeping body. The seabed breathes in balance with the ice that once covered it, rising where glaciers once pressed, sinking where the land adjusts to keep the whole raft steady. This breath has consequences, even if they unfold gradually. A village that seems safe on high ground may, over centuries, find the tide creeping closer. A cliff that seems secure may find itself stranded further from the waves as the land rises beneath it. Rivers alter their courses, estuaries deepen or shallow, and the shape of Britain's coastline bends with the seabed's patient rhythm. There is something deeply calming about this scale of time. To think of the seabed breathing across centuries reminds you that not everything is rushed. The earth moves in patience, carrying its history not in sudden moments, but in long exhalations. You are reminded that change can be both invisible and profound, shaping futures without ever hurrying. The scientists who study this motion sometimes describe it as post-glacial rebound, but you might simply call it remembering. The seabed remembers the ice that once lay upon it, and it adjusts in answer. Its memory is not like ours, held in thought or story. It is written in stone and silence, and the rising of land and the tilting of shorelines. Picture yourself walking on a beach in northern Scotland. The sand beneath your feet is not just sand. It is a surface still lifting, still carrying the breath of the earth. Beneath the waves offshore, the seabed is shifting upward, so slowly you cannot notice. But in the span of centuries, the coastline will be different. The beach where you walk may one day stand further inland, raised high above the tide dot, or imagine standing on the southern coast, near the Thames estuary. There, the opposite is true. The seabed is sinking, inching downward as the land tilts in balance with the north's rise. Over time, the sea creeps further in, swallowing marshes, deepening channels, shaping new estuaries. The land and sea converse in patience, okay? Each adjusting to the other's slow rhythm. Even as seas rise globally fed by melting ice sheets in Greenland and Antarctica, this local teething continues. Britain's coasts face not only the upward climb of water, but the tilting of land beneath. Scotland resists the rising sea by climbing higher. Southern England yields more quickly, its ground sinking into the waves. It is a delicate balance, a duet of water and stone, each moving with its own pace. The seabed's breath is so slow, so steady, that it becomes easy to forget. Daily life continues. Ships enter harbors, people walk beaches, waves roll as they always do. Underneath, the crust adjusts. Each millimeter lifted or lowered carries the story of ice, of burden, of release. There is a quiet lesson here. The world changes, not only in storms or sudden quakes, but also in patience. The seabed teaches that even stone has a rhythm, that even the earth breathes in silence. And as you listen, you may find yourself breathing with it, slowing to its pace, resting in its patience as night deepens. You imagine this ancient breath inhale of rising stone, exhale of settling ground. You picture the seabed not as still, but as alive in its own time. And with that image, your mind drifts gently forward, toward the next thought. If the seabed itself can breathe across centuries, how does that rhythm shape the land above it, the coasts and cliffs where people live and build their lives? When you look at a map of Britain, the island appears whole. Its outline is sharp, its boundaries clear. Scotland in the north, England in the south, Wales pressed to the west. To the human eye, it seems stable. Yet, beneath this unity lies a quiet division, one that stretches not across politics or language, but across stone. The island is tilting. In the north, the land is rising, lifted inch by inch as the crust remembers the weight it once carried. In the south, the ground is sinking, pressed downward in balance with the north's climb. This is not sudden or dramatic. It is a slow, patient seesaw set in motion thousands of years ago when ice pressed hard upon the land and then withdrew during the last ice age. Glaciers spread heavily across Scotland. Mountains wore crowns of ice kilometers thick. Tees filled not with rivers, but with walls of frozen water. The weight was so great that the crust beneath sank deeply into the mantle. England, by contrast, carried far less ice. Its fields and rolling hills were not pressed in the same way. When the glaciers finally melted, Scotland began to rise and release, while the south adjusted downward, a tilt that continues even now. The difference is subtle in a single lifetime. Scotland, the ground may climb a millimeter each year, so small you cannot feel it. In southern England, the ground may sink just as slowly. But over centuries, these small numbers reshape the coastline. Raised beaches in the north stand as proof of land lifted high. Sunken estuaries in the south hold the remains of forests, drowned as the ground slipped lower. This tilt is not merely a matter of geography. It is also a story of balance. The earth's crust floats on the mantle like a raft on water. Press on one side of the raft, and it dips, while the other side lifts. Remove the weight, and the raft rocks back in answer. Britain is that raft. The ice has gone, but the rocking has not ceased. One side climbs, the other sinks. The whole island adjusting in patience. If you could speed time, compressing thousands of years into a single glance, the island would seem to breathe. Scotland would rise slowly out of the sea, cliffs climbing, higher, bays retreating. England would lean gently downward, marshes widening, coasts creeping inward. The line dividing them would not be sharp, but a gradual tilt, a subtle shifting of balance across the length of the island. For the people who live upon it, this movement is invisible till its consequences arrive. In the north, harbors may grow shallower as land lifts against the sea. In the south, floodplains stretch wider, the ocean encroaching further inland. Towns that once stood safe may find themselves closer to the tide. The slow seesaw shapes futures as quietly as it shapes. Stone. Scientists measure this tilt with patience. Satellites orbiting far above capture the lift and dip of the land. GPS markers anchored in rock reveal its motion millimeter by millimeter. Tide gauges along coasts record the delicate balance of water rising and land shifting. From this data, the pattern is clear. The north climbs, the south sinks. The tilt is no illusion. The story is written not only in numbers, but in history. Long Scotland's coasts, raised beaches, sit far above the present tide, silent reminders of a shoreline. Long gone, shells and sand found high on cliffs prove that waves once touched there in England's southern estuaries. Stumps of ancient forests lie drowned beneath mud and salt, proof that fields once stretched where waves now roll. These are the traces of a land still moving, still finding its balance. The tilt has been with Britain for thousands of years, but its consequences matter more than ever now. As global seas rise with melting ice from Greenland and Antarctica, southern England faces a double burden. The water climbs higher, and the land beneath slips lower. Flood defenses must rise, not only against the ocean, but against the sinking ground itself. In the north, the rising land offsets some of the sea's advance, buying time, but not immunity. This seesaw shapes culture as well as coast. Folklore in the south carries tales of drowned lands and lost kingdoms lions off Cornwall, Cantra, Gwelad in Wales. These myths may be echoes of real places lost to the encroaching sea as the land sank. In the north, stories tell of cliffs and shores once touched by water, now standing high above it. Human memory, like stone, carries the imprint of tilt. There is something humbling in this balance. The earth adjusts in patience, indifferent to human lifetimes. Scotland climbs not in triumph, but in release. England sinks not in defeat, but in answer. Together, they keep the raft of Britain afloat, each side moving in harmony with the other. You may find comfort in this thought. The ground beneath your feet is not still, yet it is steady. Its motion is slow, unhurried, almost tender. It does not jolt or crack. It leans. It does not hurry. It breathes. To live upon it is to share in its rhythm, to walk across a seesaw so vast that only centuries reveal its tilt. As you rest with this image, imagine Britain from far above. Picture the island not as fixed, but as drifting slowly, one side lifting toward the sky, the other dipping toward the sea. The movement is not visible to the eye, but it is there, written in stone, carried in silence. And as the thought settles, you wonder if the land can tilt so quietly. What other pulses lie beneath the waves, marking the heartbeat of stone itself? When you stand by the shore, the sea seems alive. Its tides roll in and out with the pull of the moon. Its waves crash and retreat with the push of the wind. The rhythm is familiar, a kind of breathing the world has always known. But beneath this surface life, the earth itself carries another rhythm, a pulse so deep, so slow, that it takes the most delicate instruments to hear it. This is the pulse of the land beneath the sea, the quiet motion of stone as it rises and falls in answer to ancient burdens. It is not a sound you can hear, nor a tremor you can feel beneath your feet. Yet, with the right tools, scientists have learned to trace it, to measure the heartbeat of Earth hidden below waves. The story begins with satellites circling far above the planet. They look down with steady eyes, watching coastlines shift by millimeters each year. A harbour wall in Scotland inches higher. A floodplain in southern England settles lower. From space, these movements are clear, like the slow expansion and contraction of a chest. On the ground, GPS stations anchored into stone provide confirmation. These are not the simple navigation tools in phones, but precise instruments capable of sensing the tiniest lift or dip in land. They measure the Earth's crust, as though listening to its pulse, recording the patient beat of rebound and sinking. Even the sea itself listens. Tide gauges, set along coasts, have quietly collected data for more than a century. Each rise and fall of the water tells not only of tides and storms, but of land shifting beneath. Compare the records across decades, and the pattern emerges. Scotland, climbing out of the sea. Southern England, slipping gently deeper into it. Seismographs, too, sometimes catch the Earth's pulse. Though they are designed to record earthquake sudden shudders in the crust, they also reveal the stillness in between. They show the patience of land, not cracking, but breathing, adjusting slowly beneath the ocean's cover. Scientists call this pulse glacial isostatic adjustment, but you might think of it simply as memory. The Earth remembers the ice, the weight that once pressed down upon it, and it continues to respond. It's like a heartbeat that never stops. The motion is steady, invisible, yet always there to sense it, to tune yourself to a different kind of time. Human time measures in hours, days, seasons. The Earth's pulse unfolds in millennia. Each beat is not a second, but 1,000 years of rising and falling. To feel it requires patience, and to measure it requires tools that do not tire. Listen for decades. In Scotland, this pulse is felt in the land itself. Cliffs rise imperceptibly. Harbors find their waters shallower. Raised beaches stand as fossilized waves from a time when the sea reached higher. In southern England, the opposite pulse is felt: ground tilting downward, estuaries deepening, marshes stretching inland. Together, these two motions create the rhythm of the island, a heartbeat split between rise and fall. The instruments that trace this pulse tell a story not just of the past, but of the future. With each millimeter recorded, scientists can predict how the coastline will shift in centuries to come. Flood maps change, defense plans adapt, and communities learn to live with the Earth's slow, steady beat. The pulse beneath the waves is not just a scientific curiosity, it is a guide to what lies ahead. Yet, there is something more than science here. There is also wonder. To imagine the Earth carrying a heartbeat, to think of stone rising and falling, like breath, is to sense the planet as alive in its own time. Not alive in the way of forest or oceans, but alive in patience, in memory, in the slow persistence of change. Picture yourself drifting above the North Sea, suspended between sky and water. Beneath you, unseen, the crust is lifting millimeter by millimeter in a rhythm too slow to feel. Your body has a pulse, steady and quick. The Earth has a pulse too, steady and slow. One sustains you in each breath. The other sustains countenance across ages. Both are vital. Both are rhythms of life. Listening to this pulse requires humility. It reminds you that the Earth is vast and that human time is short. A single lifetime is not enough to see a full beat of the Earth's heart. But across centuries, the rhythm is unmistakable. Scotland's rise is a slow inhale. England's sinking is the slow exhale. Together, they mark the breath of a land, remembering its glaciers. The pulse beneath the waves also connects you to the deep past. Imagine standing here 10,000 years ago, at the end of the Ice Age. The glaciers had just melted, their weight removed, and the pulse had begun. The land was lifting, the seas rising, the coastline shifting in ways no one could understand. To live then was to witness the beginning of this heartbeat, even if you could not name it. and the pulse will continue into the future. Long after today's maps are forgotten, the seabed will keep rising in the north, keep sinking in the south, until the balance is complete. Then, in some distant future, new burdens may come, new ice, new weight, and the pulse will begin again. The Earth's heartbeat is eternal, repeating across ages, steady as stone. There is a quiet comfort in this, is to know that the land is not fixed, but alive with patience, is to see yourself as part of something larger. The ground beneath your feet is not a stage set still, but a participant in the planet's rhythm. It moves with memory, it breathes with time, it carries its own pulse, and as you rest with this thought, you may begin to wonder if the Earth can carry such a hidden heartbeat. What other ghosts of ice and time remain within it, still shaping the ground and the seas long after the glaciers have gone. When you walk across a grassy hill in northern Britain, there is no ice beneath your feet. The last great glaciers melted thousands of years ago. The valleys are green, the rivers run free, and the air holds the warmth of seasons instead of the sting of endless winter. Yet, if you look close in it with your eyes, but with the quiet patience of thought, you can feel their presence. The glaciers are gone, but their ghost remains. The Earth does not forget weight so easily. For tens of thousands of years, the ice pressed hard upon the land, so heavy that even mountains bent beneath it. Valleys were carved deeper, rivers were rerouted, and whole regions were shaped by frozen crowns that seemed immovable. When they melted, their absence was not the end of their story. It was the beginning of their ghostly trace. This ghost is not something you can see in a single glance. It is not a shadow on the land, nor a lingering sheet of frost. Instead, it is written in the slow adjustments of stone. The crust of Britain is still rising in the north, still sinking in the south, still carrying the memory of weight long vanished. The glaciers have left, but their pressure lives on, woven into the movement of the earth itself. Imagine the land as a great wooden beam bowed by centuries of weight. Remove the weight, and the beam does not spring back in an instant. Creaks. It adjusts. It lifts with time. The ghost of pressure remains in every fiber, every grain of the wood. Britain's crust carries the same kind of memory. The glaciers are gone, but their ghost bends the land even now in Scotland. You can see the evidence in raised beaches, old shorelines stranded high above today's sea. The waves once touched there, but the land has risen, lifting the beaches out of reach. They are ghost marks, the lingering fingerprints of vanished ice. In the south, in estuaries like the Thames and the Severn, you find the opposite, sunken forests buried beneath mud, tree trunks still rooted in soils now drowned by the sea. These are ghosts' traces to the south, sinking in balance with the north's rise, the land still shifting in memory of glaciers. The ghost is also etched into the shape of valleys and mountains. The deep U-shaped glens of Scotland, smooth and broad, are the signature of glaciers grinding their way across stone. Like rivers, which cut narrow V-shaped valleys, glaciers scrape everything wide, dragging rock and soil with them. When you walk in those glens today, with rivers flowing gently at their base, you are walking through the ghostly architecture of ice. Even the boulders, scattered across fields and hillsides, tell the story. These are erratics, rocks carried miles by glaciers and left behind when the ice melted. They sit where no local geology can explain them, strangers in a landscape that once flowed with ice. Each boulder is a ghost of a glacier, silent and heavy, reminding the land of journeys long past. But the most haunting part of this ghost lies in motion. The earth continues to adjust millimeter by millimeter, as though the glaciers still rest upon it. The mantle flows back toward the spaces once pushed aside. The crust rebounds upward where the ice pressed most heavily, a teasing, isostatic adjustment, not just a physical process, but a ghostly echo of pressure. The glaciers may have melted, but the crust still answers to their weight. For people living today, the ghost of glaciers has real effects. In the north, the land rises, protecting coasts from some of the sea's encroachment. In the south, the sinking land magnifies the threat of flooding, pushing tides further inland. Towns and villages build defenses, not only against the sea itself, but against the ghostly tilt left behind by ancient ice. The ghost also lingers in culture. Folklore across Britain tells of drowned lands and vanished worlds. Stories of Linus, a kingdom lost to the sea near Cornwall, or Cantrigwellet in Wales, echo with the memory of sinking coasts. These myths may be more than imagination. They may be folk memories of real land lost as the South sank under the ghostly adjustment of vanished glaciers. In the North, stories of endless winter, of giants moving ice and stone, may echo the weight of glaciers pressing down. The ghost has seeped not only into the land, but into the stories people tell upon it. To sense this ghost is to accept a slower time. The glaciers melted thousands of years ago, yet their memory still shapes the earth. Their ghost is patient, unhurried, adjusting stone across ages. It reminds you that the earth is not quick to forget. What happens once can leave echoes for millennia. There is also comfort in this ghost. It shows that the land is alive with memory, that even in silence, the earth carries its past forward. The presence of glaciers is gone, but their ghost guides the future. Shaping coastlines, shifting rivers, deciding where the sea will rest. Imagine lying on the ground and feeling beneath you, not stillness, but the faint hum of memory. Stone remembers weight, soil remembers pressure. The seabed rises and falls, not only with tides, but with the lingering presence of vanished glaciers. To live in Britain is to walk each day upon a ghost that never entirely fades, and as night deepens, you rest with this thought. Even when the ice itself is gone, the earth continues to carry its echo. The ghost of glaciers still presses upon the land, long after the glaciers themselves have melted into the sea. And with this reflection, another question begins to form. If ghosts of ice can linger so long, reshaping coasts and valleys, what future shapes are being drawn now, hidden in the tides, in the slow climb of the sea? Stand at the edge of the sea and look outward. The horizon feels eternal, the line where water meets sky, unbroken and still. Yet, beneath your feet and all around you, the coast itself is not fixed. The shorelines of Britain are sketches in motion, redrawn by the quiet negotiations between land and sea. The ground rises and falls, the waters climb higher, and together they decide the shape of future shores. For most of human memory, the coastline has seemed steady. Fishermen launched boats from the same harbors their fathers used. Towns grew where rivers met the sea, confident that the water would always flow the same way. But the truth is less certain. The slow rebound of the land in the north and the slow sinking in the south, combined with the steady rise of global seas, is altering the map. The coastlines of the future will not be the coastlines of today. In Scotland, where the land continues to rise, old harbors are shifting. Places once lapped by waves now sit further from the tide. Raised beaches are stranded, proof of how far the land has climbed since the glaciers melted. In the south, the story is reversed. Marshes and estuaries spread further inland, swallowing fields and villages. Rivers stretch into new paths, pulled gently by the sea. What seems permanent is, in truth, provisional. Cliffs crumble too, their faces gnawed by waves that find new reach as the sea rises and the land tilts. Chalk cliffs in the south, soft against the patience of water, fall piece by piece into the tide. In the north, basalt and granite rise higher, defiant against the sea, but even they are not eternal. The coast is always a conversation, the land yielding in some places, resisting in others. shaping its edges in response to time. The shape of future shores is not written only in stone and tide. It is also written in salt marshes, dunes, and estuaries, those fragile boundaries where land and sea breathe together. Marshes expand when the sea pushes in, retreat when the land rises. Estuaries, like mouths of rivers, widen or narrow depending on how the balance tilts. Each change in level alters the map, not in one dramatic moment, but in slow strokes invisible to the day. Scientists try to read these strokes using satellites, gauges, and models. They measure millimeters of uplift in the north and millimeters of sinking in the south, then add the steady rise of water from melting ice far away. Together, the numbers tell a future story. Scotland may stand higher above the waves, but southern England faces the advance of the sea. The Thames estuary, the Severn, and the Humber Broad and vulnerable are all part of this slow rewriting of Britain's outline. Yet numbers do not fully capture the feeling of it. Imagine yourself centuries from now, walking where today there is sea. In the north, the land will have climbed further, beaches lifted, harbors stranded, cliffs standing higher. In the south, places you know may lie beneath the tide, their fields turned to salt marsh, their villages replaced by shallow bays. The shape of Britain will be different, as it has been many times before, for this is not the first rewriting. During the last ice age, much of the North Sea was dry land, a place called Doggerland. Forests grew there, rivers wound across it, and people walked its soil. When the glaciers melted, the sea returned, drowning Doggerland beneath the waves. The coastline shifted dramatically, leaving only islands and shallow banks where once there was a vast plain. The future coasts of Britain may change more slowly, but the principle is the same. Land and sea forever draw and redraw the map. Folklore remembers these changes. Stories of lost kingdoms beneath the wave lines in Cornwall. Cantor Gweled in Wales are echoes of real places claimed by the sea. The shape of past shores became myth. The shape of future shores may one day do the same. There is something humbling in this thought. Human maps are temporary. A line drawn on paper, a boundary declared as coast, is no more permanent than a tide mark on sand. The land rises and sinks, the sea advances and retreats, and the shoreline follows. Even now, with satellites measuring every movement, the shape of Britain is still in flux. This shifting outline is not only a story of loss, it is also a story of renewal. Where marshes spread, new habitats emerge, rich with birds and fish. Where estuaries widen, new waters flow, carrying nutrients and life. The coast changes, but it does not end. It reshapes, finding new balance, offering new forms of life, even as old ones fade. For people, though, the changes are more difficult. Houses built on safe ground may one day lie beneath the tide. Cities by estuaries must raise defenses against the creeping water. Ports must adjust as harbors deepen or shallow. The shape of future shores will demand adaptation, just as it always has. But beneath the challenge lies a truth older than cities. Coasts are never still. To feel this truth is to step into a slower rhythm. The sea you see today is only one sketch, one draft in a long series of maps. The next sketch is already being drawn in the millimeter rise of Scotland, in the millimeter sinking of the South, in the steady upward climb of oceans across the world. As you close your eyes, you can imagine these future shores, raised beaches where children walk far above the present tide, drowned estuaries where boats drift above what was once farmland, cliffs standing higher in the north, salt marshes spreading wide in the south. It is not a single picture, but a series of unfolding drawings, each one shaped by the slow breath of land and sea. The shape of future shores is not an ending, but a continuation of memory. Just as glaciers left their ghost in stone, the seas will leave their ghost in maps. Each shoreline is a trace of time, a moment in the ongoing balance between Earth's crust and ocean's weight. And as you drift with this thought, another question arises gently. If the land and sea are forever, redrawing the edges of Britain, what kind of balance will the ocean itself find in the face of its own rising waters? Stand by the edge of the sea and breathe in the rhythm of waves. The water retreats, it returns, it curls and sighs against the shore. To the eye, it seems eternal, its motion unchanged for all of history. But hidden within this endless rhythm is a quieter one, the long balance between the land that rises and falls, and the water that slowly climbs. In Britain, this balance is delicate. The crust still carries the memory of glaciers. Scotland continues to rise, shrugging off the ancient weight of ice. Southern England sinks in balance, the land tilting gently southward. Yet, at the same time, the sea itself is rising, fed by melting glaciers and ice sheets far away in Greenland and Antarctica. The result is a negotiation, a slow dialogue between land and ocean, each moving according to its own memory. In the north, the rising land sometimes keeps pace with the sea, lifting coasts high enough to resist the water's approach. Raised beaches in Orkney and Shetland, stranded far above the tide, show how land has already outrun the waves. In the south, however, the sinking ground magnifies the sea's advance. Marshes spread, estuaries deepen, and floodplains stretch further. Inland, the ocean's rise, combined with the land's fall, redraws maps more quickly there than anywhere else. This balance is not uniform. It varies from place to place, like a scale shifting with every grain of sand. In Scotland, the land's rise may cancel out the sea's climb, at least for now. In East Anglia, where the ground tilts downward, the sea's rise is felt more keenly, creeping across low marshes and into river mouths. The negotiation plays out differently in each region, but everywhere it is ongoing. Scientists watch this balance with instruments designed for patience. Tide gauges, some in place for over a century, record the sea's slow climb relative to the land. Akata satellites, circling silently above, measure both the swelling of oceans and the shifting of crust. Their data revealed the dialogue, where land rises faster than water. The sea retreats, where water rises faster than land. The sea advances. The coast is the line where this negotiation is written. It is not a negotiation humans can control, only one they can adapt to. In the south, defenses rise, walls and barriers, levees and gates built to hold back the advancing water. In the north, communities adjust to harbors changing depth, to beaches stranded higher above the tide. Both responses are small notes in a vast dialogue that has been ongoing since the last ice age. And yet, this dialogue is not only a story of loss. Where land rises, new ground emerges, creating fresh landscapes for life. Where the sea advances, marshes spread, rich with birds and fish. The balance between land and sea is not destruction alone. It is transformation. The coast reshapes, new forms of life arrive, and the old make way for the new. The negotiation also carries memory. Each raised beach, each drowned forest, is a record of a past balance moment when land rose faster, or when sea climbed higher. Britain's shores are dotted with these records, each one a chapter in the long story of dialogue between stone and tide. To feel this balance is to step outside of human time. A single lifetime cannot measure it. The sea that touches a child's feet today may lie further inland for their grandchildren, or further out to sea, depending on the balance. The land does not hurry. The sea does not rush. Both move with patience, adjusting slowly. It's their conversation written in millimeters, but lasting for millennia. And there is something calming in this thought. The world is not fixed, but neither is it chaotic. It moves with rhythm, with memory, with balance. The land rises because it remembers glaciers. K. The sea rises because it remembers melting elsewhere. Together, they adjust, not in conflict, but in negotiation. Picture yourself on a quiet evening, standing by a salt marsh in southern England. The tide creeps inward, whispering across grasses, filling channels with silver. Beneath your feet, the land itself is sinking, slowly, invisibly, making more space for the sea. Far to the north, in Scotland, the opposite is true. The ground is rising, pushing the sea gently outward. You are standing between two truths, one of retreat, one of advance. Both belong to the same balance. Or imagine yourself in Orkney, looking at a raised beach high above the present tide. Once, waves touched there. Now, they lie far below, the land having lifted faster than the sea could climb. You see the ghost of a past shoreline, evidence of a negotiation already concluded. And you know that new shorelines are still being drawn. As the balance continues, the shape of Britain in the centuries ahead will be decided by this negotiation. Scotland may stand higher, its coasts fortified by rising land. Southern England may yield, its estuaries stretching wider, its fields turning to salt marsh. Neither outcome is good or bad in itself. They are simply the terms of balance. The way land and sea respond to one another. This perspective brings a kind of stillness. Worry about rising seas and sinking land is real and urgent, but beneath it lies the truth that the earth has always moved this way. Coasts are not permanent. They are breathing lines drawn by the hand of balance. To live by the sea is to accept this rhythm, to dwell at the meeting place of two patient forces. And as you breathe with this thought, you sense the calm heartbeat of the earth beneath the waves. The land lifts and sinks. Sea climbs and spreads. Their negotiation continues. Slow, steady, never ending. And with this reflection, a new question arises softly. If we can measure the balance between land and sea, what are the people who dedicate their lives to listening, scientists who turn these whispers of stone and tide into stories we can understand? To most of us, the ground feels silent. We walk across beaches, fields, and streets without sensing movement. Stone seems still. Soil feels firm. The coast appears eternal. And beneath this quiet surface, the earth is adjusting, rising, and sinking in patience. To hear this hidden story requires not ordinary ears, but delicate instruments and careful minds. And so, scientists have become the listeners, interpreters of whispers that come from beneath the sea and the land. They are geologists, oceanographers, and geophysicists working at the edge of patience. Their task is to measure millimeters across decades to detect rhythms slower than memory. They watch the crust rebound in Scotland, the south of England sink in balance, the sea rise around them all. Their work is not a pursuit of drama, but of precision. They listen to the quiet earth, and in its quiet, they find stories. One of their tools is the tide gauge. Anchored to harbors and coasts, these instruments measure the sea's rise and fall every hour of every day. At first, the data shows only tides the twice daily rhythm of the moon's pull, but stretch the record across decades. And another pattern appears: the slow climbing of the sea, the slow sinking of the land, or sometimes the slow rise of stone against water. Some gauges in Britain have been listening for more than a century, recording the earth's whispers with unwavering patience. Another tool is GPS, though not the kind you carry in your pocket to navigate roads. These GPS stations are fixed into bedrock, listening for the slightest motion. They can detect if a piece of land rises a millimeter in a year or sinks by the same amount. Scientists use them to trace Britain's tilt northward, lifting southward, dipping a seesaw so slow that only machines can hear it. From space, satellites add another layer of listening. They measured the swelling of oceans across the globe, tracked the bulging and settling of crust, and sent back signals that revealed the deep balance between land and sea. Where a human sees only shoreline, the satellite sees a moving boundary, a living line redrawn each year. Beneath the surface of the sea, sensors lie anchored to the floor. They detect subtle shifts in pressure, tiny changes in the depth of water above. When interpreted, these numbers speak of land rising beneath waves or sinking into them. The seabed, though silent to us, speaks clearly to instruments that can listen together. These tools create a kind of language. The earth whispers in millimeters, in long, slow pulses, in patterns stretched across centuries. Scientists translate these whispers into maps, models, and predictions. They become storytellers for stone, giving voice to land and sea as they shift in patience. To do this work requires humility. Scientists might devote decades to measuring a signal that moves no more than a finger's width. They must accept that their lives are short against the span of the earth, that their role is not to witness a full story, but to add one chapter of understanding. Each tide gauge, each GPS station, each satellite measurement is a sentence in the Earth's diary, recorded slowly, patiently. For those who will read it long after, the scientists who listen to the ground also carry with them the memory of the Ice Age. They know that Britain's tilt is not new, that it began when glaciers melted thousands of years ago. They see the ghost of that ice in every raised beach, every drowned forest. But they also know that the story continues as seas rise. Globally, Britain's balance with the ocean is still being negotiated. Their listening is not only about the past, it is about the future as well. Imagine one of these scientists standing on a storm-swept coast, installing a new tide gauge. To a passerby, it is just a metal structure, measuring water. But to the scientist, it is a voice, a way to hear the earth speak in numbers. Each wave that passes, each tide that rolls in, becomes part of the larger rhythm. The hidden pulse of land and sea. Or imagine a satellite scientist sitting in a quiet room, receiving streams of data from orbit. On the screen, colors show tiny shifts in elevation across Britain. To most, they look like faint gradients of red and blue. To the scientist, they are voices. Scotland, lifting. Southern England, sinking. The whole island, balancing itself. There is a quiet poetry in this work. To measure millimeters is to honor patience. To listen for centuries is to respect the Earth's time. These scientists live in two time scales at once, the quick beat of human life and the deep breath of the planet. They bridge them with instruments, bringing the silent into words. Their listening has practical weight too. Towns near the Thames must plan for the sinking of ground and the rising of sea. Harbors in Scotland must adapt to land climbing higher, leaving waters shallower. Flood defenses, coastal planning, and even daily navigation depend on the whispers translated by scientists. In their quiet work, the future of communities is written. And yet, beyond the data, beyond the charts and models, lies something more intimate. To listen to the ground is to feel connected to the planet itself. It is to recognize that the earth is not fixed, but alive in memory and motion. Scientists, in their way, become companions to the land, sitting with it in silence, hearing what others cannot hear as you imagine them at work on cliffs, on ships, in labs, or at satellites' control rooms. You may feel gratitude for their patience. They remind us that the world is not still, that it carries its history forward, that it speaks if only we know how to listen. And with this thought, you drift gently toward the next question. If the scientists can hear the whispers of stone, what stories lie beneath the sea, its self-sunken histories that once stood on land, now hidden in the deep? When you stand at the edge of the sea, it is easy to imagine that the water has always been there, that the waves have always touched the same line of coast, okay? That the land has always been land, and the sea has always been sea, okay? But this is not the truth. Beneath the tides, hidden by layers of sand and silt, lie traces of lives once lived on what is now the ocean floor. These are the sunken histories of Britain, places where people walked and built, where forests grew, where rivers flowed freely before the sea returned. The most famous of these is Doggerland. It's a plain that once stretched across what is now the North Sea. 10,000 years ago, it was not an expanse of water, but a wide land of grass, woodland, and rivers. Families lived there. Hunters followed herds across its plains. Fishers cast their nets in its streams. To them, it was home, as ordinary as any village or field today. But as the ice melted and seas rose, Doggerland was drowned, its hills becoming islands, its valleys sinking beneath the tide, until only the shallow banks of the sea remained. Archaeologists have found fragments of this world tools carved from bone, remnants of hearts, the bones of animals once hunted for food. Fishing trawlers have pulled them up from the seabed, unexpected treasures from a forgotten landscape. Each fragment is a whisper of a life erased by the slow negotiation of land and sea. Doggerland is gone, but its memory lingers in these traces, waiting to be pieced together. And Doggerland is not alone. Across Britain's coasts, there are other drowned places, other sunken histories. In Cardigan Bay, low tides sometimes reveal the stumps of ancient forests, their roots still gripping the soil where they once grew. Thousands of years ago, these forests stood tall, alive with birdsong and shadow. Now they lie preserved in mud, blackened by salt, exposed only when the tide withdraws. They are ghosts of landscapes, remind us that the sea's edge has never been still. In the Severn estuary too, traces of sunken forests appear. There, wooden trackways, built by people thousands of years ago, have been found beneath layers of silt. Imagine the care it took to lay those timbers, to walk across marshy ground where now only tides roll. The people who built them could not have known that their work would one day lie hidden underwater, preserved only for those who dig centuries later. Folklore remembers these changes as well. The Welsh legend of Cantrell Gwelyd tells of a fertile kingdom swallowed by the sea, its bells still said to ring beneath the waves when the tide is quiet. In Cornwall, tales of lioness speak of a land once stretching between Land's End and the Isles of Scilly, drowned in a single night. These stories may be myth, but they may also be echoes of real losses, memories of fields and villages, slowly claimed by the advancing sea. The histories that lie beneath the waves are not only about loss, they are also about continuity. People of Doggerland, as their land shrank, moved inland, adapting to new coasts. The builders of trackways in the Severn adjusted to rising marches, leaving behind structures suited to the world as it changed. Each drowned land is a story, not only of disappearance, but of resilience, of lives reshaped by the balance of land and water. To think of these sunken histories is to realize how fragile coastlines are. What seems permanent today a harbor, a village, a farm, in centuries to come, lie beneath the tide. Just as forests became seabeds and plains became seas, so too may parts of today's world one day be remembered as whispers from beneath the waves. Scientists studying these places use sonar to map the seabed, revealing old river valleys now hidden by water. They send divers to collect samples of peat and wood preserved beneath layers of mud. They study pollen trapped in sediment, reconstructing the forests and fields that once grew where the sea now rolls. Piece by piece, they rebuild the landscapes of the past, bringing the sunken world back into view. And yet, there is something profoundly calming about this story. The earth changes slowly, with patience. Villages sink not in moments, but in millennia. Forests drowned not in storms, but in tides that rise with quiet persistence. The changes are vast, but they unfold in silence, giving time for life to adapt, for stories to be told, for memory to endure. Picture yourself walking along a modern beach, the tide low, the sand damp beneath your feet. Beneath that sand may lie the roots of an ancient oak, or the remains of a hearth once tended by hands thousands of years ago. The waves hide them most of the time, but they are there. Quiet reminders of worlds erased by water, yet still present in memory. The sunken histories of Britain remind us that the land we know today is only one version of the Earth's surface. The coastline is not a final line, but a temporary drawing. The seas advance, the land rises and falls, and the map is redrawn again and again. Each time, people adapt, stories change, and memory carries fragments forward. There is humility in this thought, okay? The ground beneath our feet, though solid, is not eternal, okay? It can be lifted, it can be drowned, it can be remade. And the sea, though restless, is patient, claiming land, not with haste, but with certainty. Together, they create the cycle of memory, land lost, land found, histories sunken, histories told. As you rest with this reflection, imagine the bells of Cantrell ringing faintly beneath the tide, or the forests of Cardigan Bay waiting quietly under waves. Imagine Doggerland stretching across the horizon, alive with people who never knew their land would vanish. These images are not just stories of the past. They are reminders of the future, of coasts still to be rewritten. And with that thought, you drift gently toward another question. If time itself can sink villages and forests, what weight does it leave behind in the earth? How does stone carry not only the memory of ice, but the vast, unhurried weight of time itself? When you think of time, you often imagine it as something counted in days and seasons. You see it in the turning of the year, in the wrinkles on a face, in the growth of a tree. But the earth has another scale, a deeper patience, a way of keeping time not in hours or even centuries, but in the slow shifting of stone. This is the weight of time, the almost unbearable slowness with which the planet moves, adjusts, and remembers. Stand on a cliff above the sea. To you, the waves seem restless, never still, endlessly hurrying forward and back. But beneath the waves, the crust of the earth moves with a rhythm so slow it feels like stillness. A millimeter in a year, a meter in 1,000. A coastline redrawn, not in storms, but in silence. To sense this is the step outside human time and into Earth's time, where patience is the only language. The weight of time presses on every part of Britain's landscape. In the north, the land lifts itself upward after the burden of ice. It does so slowly, with the heaviness of memory. Each millimeter of rise is not just movement, it is thousands of years of adjustment, the slow exhale of stone remembering glaciers. In the south, the land sinks by the same measure, pulled gently down by balance. That sinking, too, is the weight of time, a reminder that nothing is ever truly still. Imagine carrying a heavy load for years, so long that your body reshapes itself around the burden. Even after you set it down, your posture does not immediately return. Your back holds the memory of weight. Your bones carry its shape. The earth is the same. It bore the weight of glaciers for tens of thousands of years, and even now, long after the ice melted, it continues to adjust. The weight of time bends stone as surely as it bends memory. Archaeologists and geologists see this weight in the record of land. Raised beaches show how coasts once stood lower. Sunken forests show how ground once stood higher. Each layer of soil, each line of sediment, is a page in the earth's diary of patience. The cliffs of Britain are not only rock, they are calendars of time, too vast for ordinary eyes to read. The weight of time also reveals itself in the way people tell stories. Myths of drowned kingdoms, legends of sunken lands are all shaped by the slow tilt of Britain. Cantrip Gweled in Wales, Lyoness in Cornwall, Caeland beneath the North Sea. These are not only stories, but echoes of landscapes lost under the pressure of time. Human memory tries to keep pace with Earth's memory, turning geological shifts into tales of sudden loss, into bells ringing beneath the tide, into lands swallowed in a single night. And yet, the truth is slower. Nothing here moves quickly. That the sea does not swallow kingdoms overnight, but over centuries. The land does not rise in leaps, but in whispers. The weight of time transforms catastrophes into patience, reshaping worlds in silence while people live their short lives upon it. To feel this patience is to realize how small a human life is against the earth. What seems eternal to you, a harbor, a farmhouse, a street, may last only a blink in geological time. The land beneath will rise or sink regardless, carrying its slow conversation with the sea. Yet, there is also comfort in this. The weight of time is not hostile. It is steady, inevitable, calm. It asks nothing of you but awareness. Scientists who study Britain's shifting coasts must surrender to this patience. Their instruments measure millimeters each year. Their models stretch centuries into the future. They know they will not see the end of the story, only a fraction of its telling. But that fraction is enough to remind us all. The earth moves on, carrying its memory forward, carrying the weight of time in stone. Imagine standing in the north, on a cliff in Orkney. The sea crashes below, wild and immediate. Yet, beneath that energy, the land itself is lifting in silence. It has done so since the last ice age, and it will continue for thousands of years. Or stand in the south, on the flat fens of East Anglia. The land is sinking there, not quickly, but steadily, tilting downward as Scotland rises. Both movements are invisible to the eye, but they are written in time, carried by the patience of stone. The weight of time also shapes the future. As seas rise with melting ice far away, Britain's coasts will shift again. Scotland may rise high enough to resist some of the water. Southern England may sink quickly enough to magnify its reach. Floodplains will widen, estuaries deepen, maps redraw. None of it will happen in haste, but all of it will happen with certainty. The weight of time guarantees change, and yet you can rest in this. The earth is not rushing. It is not hurried. Its changes unfold like the turning of a great wheel, slow and steady. You live for a moment upon it, sensing only a fraction, but that moment is enough to glimpse the vastness of time itself. There is a stillness in realizing that the land beneath you is not still, is moving in patience, carrying memories of ice, water, and weight. Each millimeter of rise or fall is part of a story longer than any history, a story written in the deep calendar of stone. To stand upon it is to stand within time itself, to feel its weight and its calm as you drift with this thought. You may wonder, if stone can carry the weight of time so patiently, what does it mean for memory itself? How does the earth, in its silence, keep the echo of ages alive? How does it become not only rock, but memory woven into the present? The earth does not speak in words, yet it remembers. Beneath the soil, beneath the sea, beneath the stone foundations of Britain, there lies a memory as old as the glaciers. It is written not in letters or stories, but in the tilt of land, in the rise of cliffs, in the shape of valleys. This is the meeting of earth and memory, the way stone carries the echo of ages long gone, and the way that echo shapes the present. Imagine walking along a raised beach in northern Scotland. Coutha. It looks like an ordinary strip of land, a terrace above the sea. Grass grows their birds' nests. The wind passes freely. Yet this strand of sand and shells is no ordinary slow pit, is a memory of a past shoreline when the sea once lapped much higher. The land has since risen, carrying the old beach upward, leaving it stranded far above the tide. Here, Earth has kept a memory written into its very surface. In the south of England, the opposite kind of memory appears. In the Severn estuary or the fens of East Anglia, drowned forests lie buried in mud. Their trunks, blackened by salt, still root into soils that once lay dry. Thousands of years ago, people may have walked through those woods, listening to birdsong, where now only gulls cry above the tide. The sea returned and the land sank, but the memory of the forest remains, preserved in silence. This meeting of earth and memory is not accidental. It is the nature of stone to remember, wait, to carry the imprint of what has pressed upon it. When glaciers spread across Britain, their burden reshaped the crust. When they melted, the land began its long rebound. That movement continues now, long after the ice has gone. Memory is the shape of the land itself, an echo carried forward. It's too slow for the eye, yet too certain to be denied. And just as people carry memory in stories, the earth carries memory in landscapes. A myth of a sunken kingdom is one form of remembering. A raised beach or a drowned forest is another. Both tell the same story, though in different languages. The land has shifted. The sea has advanced. The world has changed. Scientists, in listening to the ground, translate this memory into data. Satellites trace the rise of Scotland and the sinking of the South. GPS stations fix into bedrock, recording each millimeter. Tide gauges measure the negotiation of sea and land. From these signals, scientists build maps of memory, showing not only where the land is now, but how it has come to be. Their work is not only science, it is a kind of archaeology of Earth's own remembering. Yet memory is not only in measurements, it is also in silence. Stand in a glen carved by glaciers. The valley's wide U-shape is itself a memory left behind by ice grinding through stone. Stand beside an erratic boulder, carried miles by glaciers and abandoned when the ice melted. That lonely rock is a memory too, a remnant of journeys now finished. Every feature of the landscape is a note in the earth's memory, a reminder of forces that once passed through. To think of this is to realize that the ground beneath your feet is alive with the past. You walk on stone that remembers the pressure of glaciers, on soils that once lay beneath forests, on beaches that were once shorelines far from where the sea now rests. Every step is taken upon memory. This meeting of earth and memory also shapes the future. The land continues to rise in the north and sink in the south, carrying its memory into centuries to come. The coasts we know will not remain as they are. Villages may be lost to the tide. New land may be lifted higher. Harbors may shift their depth. The future is written not in blank pages, but in the continuation of memory. And there is something deeply calming in this thought. Memory and people can be fragile, forgotten, distorted, lost with time. Memory in the earth is steady, patient, unhurried. It does not fade, it reshapes. It carries forward, not in words, but in the very shape of land and sea. Imagine yourself lying on the ground, eyes closed, listening not to sound, but to the silence of stone. Beneath you, the crust is lifting, sinking, adjusting. It remembers ice. It remembers weight. It remembers time. And though you cannot hear it in ordinary ways, the memory is there, holding you gently, carrying you forward. The meeting of earth and memory is a reminder that history is larger than people. The glaciers are gone, but their story continues in stone. Forests are drowned, but their roots still speak from beneath the tide. Beaches are stranded, but they tell of seas long past. Human memory may last centuries, but Earth's memory lasts millennia. To walk upon it is to walk within a story that never ends. And as you drift with this thought, another question rises quietly. If memory shapes the land and sea, might it also shape the maps of tomorrow? What will it mean when tides in stone together write a future written not only in coasts, but in tides themselves? The sea has always been a cartographer. With each tide, it redraws the edge of land, sketching temporary maps in sand before erasing them again. But beyond the daily rise and fall lies a slower hand, one that writes in centuries rather than hours. This is the hand of tides, joined with land and author, whose words are coastlines, whose pages are maps. The future of Britain, like all islands, is written in these slow lines of water and stone. The story begins with balance. The land in the north continues to rise, shrugging off the long memory of glaciers. In the south, the ground tilts downward, leaning toward the sea. Meanwhile, oceans across the world climb higher, fed by melting ice sheets and the steady warming of water itself. Together, these movements decide the shape of coasts to come. In Scotland, the rising land may hold back the tide for a time. Harbors may find themselves farther from water. Beaches left stranded higher than the waves. A child walking there centuries from now may see an old pier perched above dry sand, puzzled that the sea once touched it. In southern England, the opposite will unfold. Their rivers will stretch into new estuaries, marshes will spread wider, and fields will yield the salt water. A farmhouse built on safe ground today may lie beneath waves in generations yet to come. This shifting of coasts is not a matter of imagination. It is already underway. The Thames estuary, the Humber, the fens of East Anglia stand on land that is sinking while seas are rising. Flood defenses rise and answer, but the tides are patient, persistent, unhurried. In the north, the Hebrides, Orkney, and Shetland lift steadily, their ancient cliffs slowly climbing higher above the surf. Different futures are being written at once on the same island by the same tides. Scientists translate these futures into maps. They model millimeters of land rise against millimeters of sea rise, projecting centuries ahead. Their maps show coasts creeping inland in the south, new wetlands spreading across marshes, villages giving way to estuaries. They show the north pulling upward, drawing old beaches farther from the tide, cliffs standing higher above waves. Each line on the map is a sentence in the story of tides and stone, but no map can capture the full feeling of these futures. Imagine standing in Cornwall, watching the sea climb inch by inch into valleys where fields once grew. Picture East Anglia as a shallow inland sea, dotted with islands where farms once stood, or stand in Orkney, looking down on a harbor now stranded far above the tide, the boats long gone, the waves reaching only faintly below. These are not disasters, nor triumphs. They are simply the handwriting of tides, the rewriting of coastlines. Folklore has long told stories of drowned lands. Cornwall, Cantreguelit in Wales, Doggerland beneath the North Sea are memories of past maps erased by tides. The future may hold its own myths, stories of villages lost to marshes, or harbors left dry, or cliffs that climbed too high for the sea to touch. Every change in coast becomes not only geography, but memory, folded into culture, turned into story. There is both fragility and resilience in this. Fragility because no wall or boundary is truly permanent against the patience of tides. Resilience because people adapt, as they always have, to new maps. The builders of trackways in the Severn estuary adjusted to rising marshes thousands of years ago. The people of Doggerland moved inland as seas advanced. In the future, too, people will move, build, and remember, carrying stories of changing coasts into new times. To sense this is to see tides differently. They are not only daily visitors, creeping in and out with the moon. They are authors of future landscapes, writing steadily and visibly across centuries. Each wave that touches a shore, Each storm that carves a cliff is part of a sentence in a story that will one day be a map. The shape of these future maps is not fixed. Much depends on the rate at which seas rise, on how quickly ice melts far away, on how land continues its slow rebound. But what is certain is change. Shorelines we know today will not remain the same. The only constant is the patience of tides. There's certainty in redrawing the line. There is something calming in this inevitability. The sea is not rushing. It is not reckless. It writes with care, with time, with patience. Its maps are drawn not in haste, but in centuries. To stand by the shore is to watch the slow turning of pages. Knowing that today's coastline is only one among many, picture yourself centuries from now, standing on a beach where today there is farmland. The sea stretches wide, the land behind. You reshaped into marsh. Oh, picture yourself on a raised cliff in Scotland, looking out over a bay that lies farther below than it once did. These are the maps of tomorrow, neither better nor worse, simply different. Danked, the handwriting of tides, the patience of stone, the weight of time. The future written in tides is not only about loss, it is also about renewal. New marshes bring new life, birds and fish thriving in waters where crops once grew. New beaches form, new estuaries spread, new coastlines offer new stories. The earth is not ending, it is reshaping. And people, too, will reshape their lives along with it, as they always have. As you rest with this thought, imagine the tides themselves as ink, the land as parchment. Each wave is a brushstroke, each century a sentence, each millennium a chapter. The map of Britain is not a final work, but a manuscript always being revised. And as you drift with this reflection, another question forms softly. If the tides are authors of the future, what of the deep earth itself? What sighs and breaths rise from beneath the waves, shaping the ocean floor like the long exhale of stone? Breathe in deeply and then release. Your chest lifts and falls, your lungs filling and emptying with air. The rhythm feels natural, necessary, constant. Yet beneath the oceans, the earth has its own rhythm of breath, not of air, but of stone. It is slower than any living breath, so slow that it takes millennia to sense, but it is there, the ocean floor itself rising as though in a long, patient exhale. This breath began when the glaciers melted for tens of thousands of years. Britain, and the seas around it, bore the weight of ice. The land sank, the seabed tilted, the crust bent beneath the burden. When the ice disappeared, the weight lifted, and the earth began to breathe out. The mantle, once pressed aside, flowed back. The crust, once bowed downward, began to rise. The exhale continues still, slow and steady, invisible yet certain. Imagine the ocean floor as a body that has carried a heavy load for too long. At last, the load is removed, and the body stretches, sighs, adjusts. That is Britain's seabed, slowly lifting beneath the waves, releasing the memory of glaciers. In the north, the lift is clearest. Scotland's coasts rise millimeter by millimeter, its seabed climbing like lungs expanding after a long-held breath. In the south, the ground tilts the other way, sinking in balance, but beneath it all lies the same motion, the same exhale of stone. This long exhale is not sudden. It does not shake the ground like an earthquake, nor erupt like a volcano. It is gentle, quiet, persistent. Tistis measured with satellites, GPS markers, and tide gauges. Each instrument captures the rise of land, the shift of seabed, the slow release of weight. What they see is not chaos, but rhythm, the exhale of the deep earth, steady as stone. You can see its traces in the landscape. Raised beaches stand above today's tides, abandoned by the retreating sea as land climbed higher. Drowned forests lie in estuaries, sunken by the tilt of ground elsewhere. Harbors deepen or shallow, not from storms, but from the steady breath of crust and sea. Okay? Each of these is a footprint of the exhale, a mark of the long breath still unfolding. To imagine this breath fully, you must let go of human time. Okay? A breath for us lasts seconds. A breath for the earth lasts millennia. Okay? Single inhale might be the slow sinking of land beneath ice. A single exhale, the slow rising of land after the ice has gone. Together, they form a cycle not of minutes, but of ages. The earth does not rush. Its lungs of stone breathe in patience, carrying the memory of glaciers into the present. This exhale has shaped history in ways often unseen. Doggerland, once a vast plain of forest and rivers, was drowned as seas rose and the south sank. Villages built along ancient coasts found themselves beneath the tide as the ground tilted downward. In the north, land emerged from the sea, raising beaches and creating new ground for people to walk upon. The exhale is not just a motion of stone, it is a reshaping of lives, of maps, of memory. The breath continues today, even as new forces join it. Global seas rise, melting from distant ice sheets. Britain's crust lifts and sinks, remembering glaciers. The two rhythms overlap. One, the exhale of land, the other, the inhale of seas. The balance between them decides where the coast will rest. In Scotland, the rising land may keep pace with the climbing water. In southern England, the sinking land may invite the sea further inland. Together, they weave the future, one breath upon another. There is comfort in the thought that even the earth's sighs, exhale is not hurried, not desperate, but calm and steady. It reminds you that release takes time. Just as your body stretches after long strain, the earth stretches after the weight of ice. It is a lesson in patience, in endurance, in the slow healing of stone. Picture yourself beneath the sea, floating above the seabed in silence. Okay? To your eyes, the floor looks still, scattered with sand, rock, and currents of silt. Yet, if you could watch for millennia, you would see it lift, rising gently upward like the surface of a chest with each breath. You would see valleys tilt, coasts redraw, harbors shift. The seabed is not still, it's breathing, sighing upward, in its own rhythm. This breath also reveals the intimacy between earth and time. To breathe is to live in rhythm, to carry memory forward with each inhale and exhale. The earth's breath is no different. It inhales the weight of glaciers. It exhales their release. Each cycle leaves traces: raised beaches, drowned forests, shifting coasts. Memory is carried not in lungs of air, but in stone and tide. Scientists, in their listening, have become witnesses to this breath. Their instruments trace the exhale, marking each millimeter of lift. Their maps reveal the patient upward motion of seabed and land. They remind us that the earth is not fixed, that even the ground beneath the sea is alive with rhythm. To study it is to sit quietly beside the planet, hearing its long sigh. Recognizing its memory, the ocean floor's long exhale is also a reminder of humility. People build walls, draw maps, declare coasts permanent. But the earth breathes regardless. Its exhale lifts or sinks land, reshapes estuaries, redraws shorelines. No map is final, no wall eternal. The breath of earth continues, indifferent to human boundaries, and yet there is peace in this indifference. The earth does not hurry. Its breath is steady, endless, certain. To live upon it is to rest within that patience, to be held by a rhythm that continues whether or not we notice. The exhale of the seabed is not against us, it's simply the way of stone, the way of time. As night deepens, you may find yourself breathing with the earth, matching your rhythm to its patience. Inhale, the weight of ice, the silence of glaciers, pressing down. Exhale, the release of stone, the seabed lifting upward. In this breath, you feel the calm of millennia, the steadiness of memory, the patience of the planet itself. And with this reflection, another thought emerges, gentle and unresolved. If stone can breathe, the ocean floor can sigh upward for thousands of years. Then perhaps, beneath all of this, lies something even deeper, the eternal patience of stone itself, carrying not only breath, but silence, waiting always for time to heal. Stone has no voice, yet it teaches patience. Beneath Britain's seas, the crust continues its slow rise and fall, a rhythm set in motion thousands of years ago. To most eyes, the land seems unmoving. Yet, across centuries, it shifts, adjusts, remembers. It is here, in the deep silence of the seabed, that you find the eternal patience of stone. Think of all that stone has endured. It bore the weight of glaciers for tens of thousands of years, pressed downward by ice thicker than mountains. It carried rivers of meltwater as the glaciers withdrew, carving valleys into its surface. It absorbed the slow burden of seas returning, rising higher each century. And still, it moves not in sudden bursts, but in whispers, millimeter by millimeter, century after century. This patience is not passive. It is active in its own way. The crust rebounds in Scotland, lifting itself upward as though slowly shrugging, free of old weight. In southern England, the ground tilts downward, yielding in balance. Both are signs of motion, but neither hurries. Stone remembers what it carried, and it adjusts with time as its companion. If you could compress millennia into minutes, you would see stone as fluid. The crust would rise and sink, the seabed would tilt, coastlines would retreat and advance. But in our slower human lives, the patience of stone is almost invisible. It becomes a kind of stillness, though beneath that stillness lies a rhythm deeper than any tide. This patience shapes more than geography. It shapes memory and myth. Legends of drowned lands, Doggerland, beneath the North Sea, Lyoness, near Cornwall, Cantrequelid in Wales are not only stories. They are cultural echoes of stone's slow tilt, the patience of the land as it adjusted beneath rising seas. People remembered in stories what the earth remembered in silence. Raised beaches are monuments to patience. They show where waves once touched, now stranded far above the tide. They are reminders that the land has climbed slowly, carrying old shorelines with it. Sunken forests, blackened and buried in estuaries, are the other side of this patience remnants, of land surrendered to the sea as the south tilted lower. In both, you see the patience of stone, carrying traces of both rise and fall, holding memory without haste. Scientists study this patience with instruments that measure what human senses cannot. GPS stations fixed to rock record millimeters of lift each year. Tide gauges listen for the balance of sea and land, collecting data across generations. Satellites map the slow movement of crust and ocean alike. Each measurement is a reminder that the earth, though patient, is not still. Its stone continues to move with eternal steadiness. To sense this patience is to imagine stone as a kind of breathing body. It inhales the weight of glaciers. It exhales their release. The breath is so long, it spans ages, but it is there, written in the tilt of Britain's land. Scotland rises. Southern England sinks. The ocean floor sighs upward in slow relief. Stone does not forget, but neither does it rush. This eternal patience is also a teacher. It shows that healing takes time. Just as the earth stretches and lifts after the burden of ice, so to do lives take time to recover from their own weights. Nothing mends in an instant. Everything requires patience, silence, endurance. The land beneath Britain proves this truth, carrying its adjustment calmly, steadily, over millennia. Imagine lying on a beach at night, listening to waves roll in. Beneath the sound of the tide, imagine the land itself moving not quickly, but slowly, invisibly. The seabed beneath the waves lifts, the cliffs tilt, the crust adjusts. You cannot feel it, but it is there, carrying you in its patience. The eternal patience of stone also holds the future. In centuries to come, the coasts of Britain will not be as they are today. Marshes in the south will spread wider, estuaries will deepen, fields will give way to water. In the north, beaches will rise higher, cliffs will stand taller, harbors will sit further from the sea. These are not sudden futures, but patient ones. The earth writes them in millimeters, in centuries, in ages, and there is peace in this. 2. Live upon stone is to live within patience itself. The land does not rush, and neither does the sea. Both move slowly, steadily, shaping maps and memories without hurry. You, too, are part of this rhythmural life, brief against the scale of millennia, yet still held within the patience of the earth. The eternal patience of stone is not indifferent, though it may seem so. It is steady, enduring, constant. It allows life to grow, to adapt, to change. Without this patience, without the slow rise and fall of land, the earth would be chaos. Instead, it is calm, a planet breathing in stone, carrying memory across time. As night deepens, imagine the seabed sighing upward, Scotland rising, southern England sinking. Picture the patience of stone holding the weight of glaciers, then lifting. In relief, hear the silence of this breath, a rhythm too slow to hear, but steady enough to shape the world. And with this thought, you may feel your own breath slow, matching the earth's inhale, memory of ice, exhale, patience of stone. The rhythm continues, steady and calm. And in that calm, another gentle question arises. If stone can be patient, if land can remember so quietly, then perhaps memory itself ours, and the earth's not so different, each a way of carrying the past into the present.